Hello, welcome to the Carolina Justice Report. I am Rainey Romero, chatting with attorneys Sarah Austin and Amy Lawrence. Today we're chatting all about civil rights that you may not know about. So ladies, when we talk about civil rights, I think the first thing that pops into my head is a lot of racism things, but really this can be other things. What are other civil rights we may not know about?
Yeah, we always think of Martin Luther King.
Right, yeah.
Right, no, absolutely. And that's part of it for sure. But, we're looking at, did the government violate someone's civil rights? And in those cases, let me preface this whole conversation with, I also do criminal defense, and I love good police officers. Mm-hmm. They are some of my best friends, and good police officers love me. They do.
Yeah.
Because I shine a light when there's a bad one.
Right.
And so, and I think I've said this before, and Chris Rock said it best, you can't have bad apples that are police officers. Because,
That's true.
When you put a gun in someone's hand and they have to make a split-second decision, you can't have a bad apple. Mm-hmm. Just like we can't have a bad apple with pilots, right? Can't say, he had a bad day.
Yep.
Took a whole plane down with him. So, and the best thing I tell people is, police officers need more education. Mm-hmm. They need more training. And when they get more training and more education, then it's just better for everybody.
Right.
But we love good cops. Bad cops, not so much. There's nothing I hate worse than a bad cop. And good cops will tell you the same thing. The one thing they hate the most is a bad cop. But in these cases, we're usually talking about some kind of police misconduct.
Okay.
We're talking about jail misconduct cases, jail suicides, jail assaults, police rape, and abusive and excessive force cases. Mm-hmm. We've all seen... Sean King's videos on Facebook where it shows, a young black man who's being shot.
Right.
For essentially nothing. We see the case down in Charleston, the Slager case, where he shoots a black man in the back and kills him. Mm-hmm. These are the kind of cases we're talking about. And there's nothing that gets me all riled up and ready to choke people out and sue them and do everything we can to stop this kind of nonsense.
Right, because you're placed in a position of leadership, right?
Yeah.
And you're expected for the cop to do the right thing. So
we're supposed to be the best of the best. Mm-hmm. I include lawyers in that too, and doctors. We're supposed to protect people. Mm-hmm. And when I see this abuse of power shift, and it's usually, and the more I see it, it's like when I see cops in fatigues, it makes me so mad. Right? The militarization of cops, because they're supposed to protect and serve. And instead, they're given this...
And I think it makes them more scary, too, to see them like they're a military, when really the cops I know and the cops we love, and we depend on cops in the civil, in our car accidents and DUI cases and stuff like that to do the investigation. So we work closely with them all the time. And, it's when you talk to people who sometimes are scared to call the police when they're in trouble, and you're like, well, why were you scared? That's when the civil rights stuff comes in, and when they look scary and they're fatigues and stuff like that, when you should just be able to call them and say, I need help, and those are the people that come and help you.
Right.
Yeah. They should never add to the pain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we see that. One of the biggest cases in my career has been an Horry County Police Department case, where it's been going on for years, 6 years. And matter of fact, we go to trial May 2nd in federal court in Columbia on the last two cases. I represented many women who were sexually assaulted by a police officer.
I think it's important because we talked about, you think civil rights and you think about racism and
Right.
Black Lives Matter and what's going on with Black men and Black women getting shot by the police. But it's not just that, it's also women.
Right.
And Amy does a lot of that.
Well,
Yeah.
And how does that even happen? Is the police officer there alone? They don't have their...
So in this particular
partner?
case, these women were sexually assaulted, and the officer and investigator that was tasked with investigating these sexual assault cases,
Gotcha.
unfounded the case, said there was no case there, even though there was, and never went after the perpetrator, and then ended up re-victimizing those victims and sexually assaulting them.
Multiple.
Oh, there's...
More that wanted to come forward, I think.
We have so many women that called me and they said, it makes me cry when I think about it. They said, I don't, they were outside the statute of limitations, but they didn't even want to sue. They didn't want anybody to even know. And they said, I want you to know that those women were telling the truth. And this is my story. And I've spent many an afternoon sobbing with women and hearing their stories of what has happened to them.
Yeah.
Because this guy was a monster.
And I think, and he was a monster, and a bad apple is not even
that
doesn't do him justice. But I guess in the civil rights cases, what we're looking for is how did this bad apple get through the system for so long? Like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
Because you talk to most cops and they'd be like, I would never be able to do that. I would never be able to get away with that.
How did they pull this kind of stuff off?
How did he pull this off, and how can we prevent it from happening again?
Yeah.
And I think that's the part that really just breaks my heart and makes me just want to not kill people, but kill people. Because you see all the red flags for these departments, and then they constantly are turning their head to it, right? They're constantly being put on notice, that's what we're always looking for in these cases.
It's common in a lot of the shooting cases you hear about too, where this police officer had a record of sort of being unhinged at almost every single traffic stop, and then this happens. It's like, why was there nothing in place to take a step back to send him for more training to fire him?
Yeah.
And then even when they find out, and instead of falling on the sword and saying, look, we failed at every level here, and I am so sorry, but this is what we're going to do to fix it. And instead you have indignancy and we didn't do anything wrong, and then nothing changes. And you know what happens when nothing changes? Nothing changes.
You see the good cops sort of getting backlash or getting fired or moved to a desk job for speaking up against seeing a bad cop do something bad. And I think I would like to see a system, and that's why we take these kind of cases, is to give the good cops a voice where they can say, hey, I saw this happening and it's messed up, and know that they're not going to get demoted or fired, and this bad cop just gets to reign on, like happened in our case that's going to trial coming up.
And we see it in most cases that we're looking at this, is that somebody spoke out and they paid a price for it.
Right. So with police misconduct, and I ask this just because I don't really know, is that always a physical misconduct, or is there another kind of misconduct?
It's usually physical. It's usually that they've abused their power in some way, whether it's sexual or hitting. And one of the things we look at in these kind of cases is, was there this malicious, and this is what I'm looking for, because I know their lack of training, right? So I'm always looking, was this a malicious thing, right? Are you kicking a black man who's handcuffed on the floor in the head? That would be malicious.
Right.
Or did you do something and there, nothing like that, but did you do something and it was just because you didn't know any better?
Right.
Because no one ever told you. And so I'm constantly, and I think that police officers are a lot more apt to listen to me, and because I pull them aside and I tell them, look, I didn't know these things before, but I want you to know them, because if you don't know any better, you can't do any better.
Right.
And so if I tell you and I kind of educate them and inform them, I think it's because I'm a woman that they probably take it a lot easier. I think if Justin, looked at him and said, hey, you're doing this wrong, I'd probably have a different reaction. But they know it's coming from a place of love. And I also will print off I have pocket constitutions in my bag that I'll give police officers sometimes, because you'll be surprised they've never read it, which is just mind blowing to me. And no one asked them to, right?
Right.
They didn't know any better.
It wasn't a requirement.
Right, it wasn't a requirement. And I'll have case law, I've had a kid that was, or a lady that was, it was a kid, a female kid, and by kid I mean 20, who said F the police, something like that. And they were arrested for breach of peace, disorderly conduct, something like that. And there's case law in point that says that's freedom of speech.
Right.
You can't, as long as they don't incite violence, there's these rules behind it, you can say whatever you want to the police. And while it's not kind, and it's not respectful, it's not illegal.
Right.
And so I pull those police officers aside and say, hey, I'm really sorry that this happened to you, and that was not kind or respectful, but it's not illegal. And this is why. And here's the case. I'll have a little packet for them. That way that I'm telling you the truth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That I have all the facts to back it up. And they're really appreciative when I do that.
Yeah.
Because I said, this is your livelihood. You have a family that you have to feed and put a roof over their head. And I know that you want to be protected, and the more you know in life.
Right.
When life gets ugly, justice is lovely. The love